Even when you've made a recipe a countless number of times, sometimes dinner just does not go as planned. My chicken pot pies turned out great though, and I'm going to show you how to avoid or fix those screw-ups. And when you put baking soda on a grease fire, it smokes some more. But my pies turned out pretty. I'm going to have to wash my hair to get the smell of smoke out. Hi, I'm Callie, and welcome to my kitchen. Tonight at our house, it's chicken pot pie night. For some, that may mean pulling a chicken pot pie out of the freezer and putting it in the oven or the microwave, but not around here. I like to make mine completely from scratch. And it's actually a cheaper meal around here because all the ingredients for it cost me about $10 to make 8 portions about this big. I'm feeding a pretty large family, and I like to feed them meals that are full of protein and will get them full so that my little hobbits aren't coming back in here for second dinner. I'm actually going to make 2 9.5-inch chicken pot pies with what I'm making. You can cut this down if you'd like. You can completely cut it in half and do a pound of chicken and a pound of vegetables. You can actually make this cost even less than what I've done if you're buying the store brands or the Great Value brands, but you could also get a bag of frozen vegetables that's about $2. That's anywhere between 1 and 2 pounds, depending on how much you like in your pot pie, the ratios that you like in your pot pie. When I used to come home from work and make this recipe, I would use chicken, I would frozen vegetables, I would cook it all in a skillet, and then take a box of pre-made puff pastry and roll it out on top and pop the whole thing in the oven. Cook it in the oven for 30 to 40 minutes while I went and sat down. It can be a quicker meal if you like too, because you can even use a rotisserie chicken and pull all the chicken off, throw the frozen vegetables in with a sauce that I'm going to show you how to make with some puff pastry or some biscuit that you like and pop it in the oven. Tonight, I'm going to use my savory flaky pie crust, which is about $5 in ingredients in itself, that I've added in to get the $10 that this is costing me. I bought a 2-pound bag of carrots, but I'm only using a pound of it. So the cost for my recipe is only the pound of carrots or the $1 for those carrots. When you're costing out a recipe in a restaurant, that's how you cost out a recipe, because I'm going to use the rest of the carrots in another meal. I don't cost all of my seasoning, just the portion of it that I'm using. If you didn't have all of these seasonings and you're trying to get all of this from the store for $10 or $12, you could get a little pre-seasoned, something like Greek seasoning would actually taste pretty good in this recipe and be pretty similar to what I'm going to use. Just be careful with the salt. Since I didn't get all the frozen vegetables and I am working with frozen chicken, I'm going to take my frozen chicken and put it in a bowl and run it under cold water, get that thawed. I'm going to wash, peel, and chop my carrots. Once my chicken's thawed, I'm going to get it chopped and chop an onion and some garlic, and we'll be back. Okay, slight change of plans for dinner, y'all, because this really is my dinner that I am cooking that I'm showing you the video of. We have full bone-in chicken thighs with skin instead of boneless, skinless chicken thighs. So I didn't start thawing them until I was starting to cook. I usually just thaw them by putting them in a bowl with running water on them, and they thaw in a few minutes. Well, that doesn't work very well with bone-in chicken thighs. So I've already gotten all my other prep ready. It's been quite a while, close to an hour, and they're still not thawed. There's a few different safe ways to thaw meat. Under refrigeration, which I don't have time for, in the microwave, which I almost never do, under cold running water, or while cooking. And tonight, we're going to do this while cooking. It's okay because bone-in chicken thighs are going to be one of the cheaper cuts of meat that you can buy. So if you're really trying to cut costs, I'm going to show you how to cook bone-in chicken and still make pot pie with it. I've got my skillet preheated and almost to the smoking point now that I've talked. I'm going to put 2 tablespoons of butter in here. And try not to set off the smoke alarm. I'm going to get my rinsed and clean chicken. I did have to rinse some bone shards off the end and make sure I pulled any pin feathers. But I'm going to put this skin side down in this pan and wash my hands. And release down the sink and everything. Once the chicken comes up easily and is loose, I'm just going to flip this over. I'm just trying to get a little sear all over this chicken. And if you're saying, but she didn't season it yet, there's a reason. because by the time I get this chicken cooked, I'm afraid any seasoning that I would have put on the outside would be burnt. And I'm going to add some other stuff in here to cook with it while it cooks, while it thaws and cooks. So I've got about 2 teaspoons of better than bouillon or chicken base left in this. Instead of chicken stock, I'm using better than bouillon. You can use chicken stock for this part if you'd like. So this is cheaper though. I've mixed 2 teaspoons of it with water. And I'm going to add the other 2 cups straight into the pot instead of using another bowl and mixing it, because I don't like dishes. And I'm just going to simmer the chicken in the chicken stock to get it completely cooked. If you're not using bone-in chicken, what I normally do is have it thawed and chop it into pieces, or even fry it or sear it in the pan with the garlic and onions and carrots. And then once it's cooked, I'll pull it out. I don't really like handling raw chicken, so a lot of times I'll just cook it in the pan with my seasonings and my aromatics, and then take it out and chop it up into cubes, throw it back in, and this, which is pretty much what we're going to do here. We're going to completely cook it and then take it out and handle it. If you want something a lot quicker, you could take a rotisserie chicken, shred it down, and start from the part after we've cooked it. You could have your chicken thawed ahead of time and, have a prepared dinner. But, that's not our style. But I'm just going to simmer this and we'll be back. So at one point I did add some more stock and flip them over. I didn't have it covered originally. It might not have taken as long. I could have cooked them in the oven if they had been thawed. They were frozen to the bone, so I was afraid that they would get burnt on the outside before they were even thawed in the middle or by the bone. But now all of that water has cooked off, or all of that stock has cooked off. I'm going to crisp up this skin a little. I think these are cooked all the way through. Again, this is not ideally how I would have cooked it, but it's what we're working with. If you had thawed chicken, you could pretty much start at this point and put, even with bone in, cook it with the onions and garlic if you'd like, or just cook it like this. I'm going to get this chicken out of here because this chicken is cooked. But I've got some good stuff in that pan now. I'm going to throw in the onions. I have used quite a bit of chicken stock at this point, so I'm a little scared to salt it. But I am going to add a little bit of white pepper. I don't have much left. A little bit of sage. A little bit of thyme. If you're using fresh herbs, you want to do them at the end, but if you're using dried herbs, you want to do them now. And I'm only adding maybe a quarter of a teaspoon and maybe a quarter of a teaspoon of both of them. I wasn't originally intending on using this, and it's not going to be in the recipe, but my chicken stuck to the pan a little, and instead of letting it sit there and burn, I'm going to use a little sake, or if you have white wine, or even a little bit of something like rice vinegar or something, you can put it in to deglaze that pan to keep all the chicken bits from burning. I want them in there because it's flavor, but I want to keep them from burning, and sake is not really going to add a whole new flavor to it. It's just going to keep me from having burnt pan. Burnt chicken bits. I think we need more sake. I'm going to add in my carrots. Now that you can smell that. Add in my carrots. You could use rice wine vinegar. You could use white wine. I'm using sake because it's the first thing I found. I didn't want that to burn on the pan. I'm going to cook these carrots down some. I do still plan on cooking everything in the oven, so they're going to cook some more then. So I don't want to cook everything the mush in the pan. While those cook some, I'm going to see if I can get my chicken ripped up. I'm basically just pulling the bone out of this chicken. Which is still pretty hot. I pulled all the bones and joints out. I did have to add a little bit of water to my vegetables to keep them from burning because this is a little too hot to handle. But now that I have all of the hard pieces out, I'm just going to chop this up. If you were using a rotisserie chicken, it would pretty much look like this. You pull it all off and chop it up. Just make sure you get a flavor of rotisserie chicken that's going to go with your pot pie. It used to be some places that rotisserie chickens were cheaper than buying a chicken, but prices on everything seem to have changed lately. So I'm not sure if that's true anymore. I'll wash my hands. And let's not forget our garlic. I don't think I said, but it was 2 small onions, or about 8 ounces of onions. I used Vidalia onions. It was a pound of carrots, washed, peeled, and then sliced. Cut in half and then sliced. It was an entire bulb of garlic. I didn't weigh that one, but it was a full bulb. My peas started out frozen, but by the time the chicken is thawed, they might still be frozen. It's going to be about a pound of peas. My garlic's been in there for a couple of minutes. I'm going to take all of this out. I'm going to put this in the microwave to keep the vent off. Take this off for just a minute because that burner takes forever to cool off and heat up, so I'm just going to take it off. I'm going to use 2 tablespoons of butter. It is very soft at this point. Three tablespoons of flour. While I was cooking the chicken, I went ahead and rolled out the other pie crust and the tops for my pie crust. I'm making a roux, which is 2 parts butter and 3 parts flour. All I really need to do for this roux, since I'm making a white roux or a light roux, is to make sure that all the flour is mixed in with the butter. The residual heat on this pan is enough heat for right now. I'm going to add in 1/4 to a 1/2 teaspoon more sage. I don't know if I have any white pepper left in this. We need to add white pepper to the list. How about another 1/4 teaspoon more thyme? Add about a 1/2 teaspoon of onion powder and a 1/2 teaspoon of garlic powder. Maybe a teaspoon of garlic powder. And you can smell that right away on that hot pan. If I had stock, I would use stock at this point. But instead, I'm using better than bouillon. And instead of mixing it in a separate bowl, I'm gonna add water and then the better than bouillon separate in the pan instead of taking time to mix it. So I'm adding 3 cups of water and a tablespoon of better than bouillon, or 3 cups of stock. Or a little more than a tablespoon. Remember, we added several cups of stock earlier and it's all boiled down. It hasn't been taken out of the pan. It's what the chicken cooked in. So at this point, we're going to mix in our bouillon and our roux. And the roux probably will clump because it's not warm water yet, which used to scare me. But as soon as the water warms up, that roux will mix right in, and we'll have a smooth sauce. And all those bits on the bottom of the pan are not burnt, they're flavor. It's starting to simmer. You want to keep it stirred so it doesn't stick. The bottom of this pan is completely smooth now. It's pulled all those good bits off from the chicken and from the vegetables. That's flavor. And in case you're worried that I boiled the chicken, my husband's been gnawing the meat that I left on the bones off and says it's full of flavor. Rather gnawing bones. Remember, we put several cups of stock and then boiled that all down. So all that was concentrated on that chicken. So although I didn't put the herbs on there that I am using, it still had plenty of flavor from the stock. And it was cooked with bone, so you have the flavor from that too. In case you haven't figured it out yet, this is going to be the gravy or the sauce for our pot pie, or in our pot pie. Typically when I cook something like this, I simmer it for at least 6 minutes to cook the raw flour taste out. That's not really necessary in this case because it's going to cook in the oven for close 30 or 40 minutes to cook our crust. But I still want to get it to the thickness that I want it. So I am going to cook it for a few minutes, or simmer it for a few minutes once it starts simmering. It's been cooking for several minutes, or simmering for several minutes. I'm going to taste it and make sure it doesn't need salt. I don't think it's going to. It definitely does not. This is completely optional. I like adding it. I usually do about half stock and half milk. In this case, I'm going to add a cup of milk. Most of the time, I do 2 cups of stock and 2 cups of milk. Tried something a little different this time. I think it needs some milk. It makes it creamier, but I don't like to do all milk or all stock. I like it more half and half. I do like to end up at least 4 cups combined, whichever way you go with it. It's simmering again, so I'm going to get my chicken and vegetables. Now remember in the beginning when I said this is not a low-fat recipe. This is a 16-ounce container, and I'm going to add about 4 ounces of sour cream. I did say it is a lower cost recipe, and I have found sour cream is usually around $1, $1.50 for 8 ounces. So it's really only about 75 cents worth of sour cream. It may sound like an odd addition to this, but once you taste this, people usually agree with me on this one. It makes it creamier and it adds a nice tang to it. I don't eat a lot of sour cream. This is one of the few recipes that I put sour cream in, because I don't even eat sour cream on my tacos. I'm going to go ahead and put my peas in. They probably aren't very frozen anymore. Hot spit in my more than a pound worth of peas. I don't know. This was half of a 28-ounce bag, or 1 pound 12 ounces. So it was less than 2 pounds, and we used about half of it in the last chicken pot pie. I don't feel like peas have to cook as long as everything else. They mostly have to be thawed and heated up. If you want to cut time and a little bit of cost, when I used to make this when I would get off work, I would just take 1 bag of frozen vegetables, saute the onions and garlic while I cooked the chicken, cube the chicken, throw it all in there, throw the bag of frozen vegetables in there, take a box of puff pastry. They come 2 in a box. They're usually on sale for about like 2 for $3 sometimes, or 2 for $6. I would take one of the puff pastries, let it thaw out. You can roll it out a little or stretch it out a little, and just put it over this at this point and put it in the oven. And then go sit down. I've also done this with biscuit dough, where I would put biscuit dough in a big glass dish, like an 8 by 13-inch dish, and I would roll biscuit dough out on the bottom, or roll pie crust out on the bottom, and then pour this whole 12-inch skillet into it, and then put a biscuit dough over the top. Just roll a biscuit dough, or sometimes I pressed biscuits and did it all over the top. Did it quite a few different ways, depending on how I was feeling, or how much time I had, or what I had to work with. Today we had enough time to spend a little extra time to make pie crust, and we really like the pie crust. Or at least I really like the pie crust, and I'm sitting here making it, So the longer this cooks, the thicker it'll get, but it's also going to cook in the oven, so I think it's done at this point. I'm going to taste it and see. Very chicken thigh. I know you're going to like that. Okay. I'm going to turn this off, and I'm going to get my pie crust out and get it divvied up in my pie crust. I did do a separate video on the pie crust. After I rolled out the pie crust, you basically put it in the refrigerator for 20 or 30 minutes to get the butter in it hard again. This has had much longer than that. I'm going to divvy this up between these 2 9.5-inch pies. Since my filling is hot, I want to move as quickly and as efficiently as possible, because I need this pie crust to not melt. My pie pans are 9.5 inches each. So this is 2 pounds of chicken, well, 2.5 pounds with bones, a pound of carrots, a pound of peas, over half a pound of onion, and several ounces of garlic. So if you make one, it would be 1 pound of chicken, a pound altogether of vegetables, an onion, and some garlic. Or if you are feeding 6 to 8 people like I am, you would do this. So while my chicken was cooking, I went ahead and rolled out the tops of the pie crust and rolled them and put them in the freezer. I am doing a video that gives details on how to make the pie crust, my flaky pie crust. This is the savory pie crust with no sugar, but I'm just going to give this just a minute to thaw because I had it in the freezer for too long because I didn't have room in the refrigerator. I should have taken those out when I did these. Note to self, don't put them in the freezer for this long or take them out when you start doing the pies. If you do put your dough in the freezer, make sure you take it out in time for it to thaw when your pie crust is ready. These are thawed now. This one has thawed now in places. Is just press this together to seal it. I'm going to fold it under. We'll do it where you can see it. I am actually going to take a fork on this one and try that. A lot of times I don't do an egg wash. I've always thought it was a waste of an egg, but it really does make a difference. Especially when you fussed over something as long as I have this pie tonight. I'm going to do an egg wash and make my pie pretty. Pies pretty. I'm just going to put a few vent holes in here. And then we have a couple holes in it already. So if you don't, it will come out all over in places that you don't want it to, and then it won't look anywhere near as pretty. Oven's preheated at 425 degrees. We're going to pop these babies in the oven. And we're going to get all of this cleaned up. I'm going to check these in 30 minutes, but it'll probably be 40 or 45 before they're done. So something I should note that I neglected to do when I put my pies in the oven was put something under the pies. Those crusts are very high fat content and dripped, and our oven has this flat bottom that where anything drips on it, it smokes. And when you put baking soda on a grease fire, it smokes some more. But my pies turned out pretty. My eyes and lungs burn a little, so we're going to continue to air the house out before we try my pretty pies, but just thought I should note that since I neglected to do that in the video. So we have the apartment cleared out a little now. It's important to know that baking soda puts out a grease fire, but my pies still look good. And dinner's ready. When I say there is a wide range of things that you could screw up with homemade pie crust and it still turn out good, I meant that. Got a mess to clean up, but when you bake pies, you always want to keep something under them. I had aluminum foil under them, but it was not completely under it, and it dripped enough grease from this pie, or butter from this pie, that it overflowed the aluminum foil, hit the bottom of the oven, and caught fire. So, baking soda works great for grease fires, but it does still smoke, and here we are. But I think my pies turned out pretty good, and I think we're ready to taste them. When we make these, we pretty much make quarter pie slices. This makes 8 servings in our house. I probably shouldn't have started out so big though. I've just completely mushed it up. What spatula thing? Look at a picture. And if you can see that flaky crust, we like the thick crust. Like, we really like the thick crust. We're in this for the crust. And I think my husband's going to be very happy with the chicken thigh taste that this pie has. That has so much more flavor than some boneless, skinless chicken breast. That crust, though. I just want to show you how flaky that crust is. Can you see that? If you liked this video, go ahead and give us that thumbs up. If you found it amusing, give us that thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't already. We hope to have more out to you soon. In the meantime, It's finally dinner time. Y'all have a good one. And y'all wash up. Let's eat. I'm gonna have to wash my hair to get the smell of smoke out.